the Rasmussen University Live Career Chat. We will begin in just a moment. It is almost noon Central Time. We'll just give a couple more seconds here for some of our attendees to log in. And excellent. I see that number is steadily increasing here. So just a few more seconds and then we will get started. All right, it is noon Central Time, so I'd like to get started with our webinar and our live career chat hosted by Career Services. And we also have some wonderful industry experts here with us today. My name is Stephanie Daniels, and I am a Senior Career Services Advisor with Rasmussen University. And joining me today is Heather Keenest, Senior Career Services Advisor as well. Welcome, Heather.
Thank you. Hello, everyone.
All right, fantastic. So before we get started with no experience, no problem, I'd like to take just a quick moment here to locate a few buttons on our screen in front of you. So the first one and most important one, if you have questions, I'd like you to locate the Q&A box. So that should be located in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. So throughout the webinar, if you think of a question or perhaps your question maybe will be answered throughout and you want to wait till the end, that's fine. But please use the Q&A box to ask your question. And also, if you would like closed captioning, there should be an option in the lower left-hand side of your screen where you'll be able to turn that on if you do wish to do so. All right, so let's get started today. So there are many reasons why someone may not have field-related experience or any professional experience at all. So writing a resume and speaking to your skills and your abilities, your qualifications. In an interview, this can be very intimidating because you may not know what to say or what to include. But the experience that you do have is valuable and it's relevant. So Heather and I and our panel of industry experts will discuss how to look at your experiences, even those that aren't related to your field, but look at those as valuable and relevant. So for our agenda today, we're going to first talk a little bit about self-assessments and the experience inventory. We're going to move into researching your career and why that's important. Heather's going to talk about resumes and interviewing and how you can apply and derive some of those skills from your past experience. And then we're going to move into our professional insight, get some great advice from our experts. And then at the end, we're going to summarize and we want you to create an action plan. So moving from our webinar today, we want you to put some action into place so that you can move forward, feel more confident, and work towards your future career. All right, so getting started today. So as a job seeker, you might find yourself thinking, how do I find an entry-level job without experience? Maybe you think, I don't have 1, 2, 3, or so many years of experience. Now, how does this make you feel? Do you feel defeated? Do you feel maybe confused or challenged? And maybe after that, the thought follows, well, how do I gain that experience that the employer is looking for so I can apply to these jobs? Or perhaps you might think, what jobs do I qualify for? So in career services, we talk about this topic of experience very often, if not on a weekly basis. So as a new grad, you are ready to move into your career. You are ready to grow professionally, and you might locate a job posting and that one bullet point that says experience preferred. And you might think, oh gosh, roadblock? Well, maybe, but maybe not. So the truth of this matter does not always come down to experience, especially for an entry-level role. It comes down to your ability as the job seeker to uncover your unique experiences through a self-assessment and how you then promote that experience you do have to help you stand out. So now we see the challenge. So what we're going to do following this step forward is we're going to see how we can work towards a solution. So first, you're going to perform that self-assessment, and you're going to help yourself identify skills that apply to multiple different industries and roles. And this is going to take work. It's going to demand vulnerability. We want you to be open and accepting of that constructive feedback. But it's also going to be beneficial, most beneficial when you leverage your support team. Now, I'll talk about that in a second, but as a professional, a self-assessment is an ongoing professional development that should continue throughout your career. So your results may not be instant, so give yourself grace and stay positive. Okay, so in the past, I've worked with business students, and they frequently comment that they're not able to apply to jobs because all the jobs they looked at require experience they don't have. So in the conversation with students, and I would ask them questions. Tell me about what you've done in the past. Tell me a little bit about your hobbies, what you do from day to day. Are you involved in the community? And I would jot down notes on my end. I would jot down skills I heard. I would jot down strengths I heard. And at the end, when I was finished with the conversation, I would summarize my notes. And the aha moment at the end of our conversation is that those students did not realize that those skills were related or transferable to the job postings that they were looking at. So another comment that I hear is, I didn't put that on my resume because I didn't think it mattered to an employer, or it's not industry related, so I don't have any experience. Not true. And let's squish that myth right now. So we're going to understand today, moving forward, that all of your experience matters, whether it's paid, unpaid, voluntary, community service, professional groups, students in the associations on campus, internships, clinical experience, coaching, parent-teacher organizations, caregiving, and so much more. That's all experience. So don't undersell that experience. Instead, find a way to tie your skills to the success of the industry or the business or the school or the association. So caregivers, for example, consider skills that you used or developed while you were caregiving. Students, consider those skills that you've gained during your coursework, maybe in presentations, clinical experience. Did you help with a service project while on campus? Think about those involvements. So we'll go into more detail about exploring these skills from your past and how to apply these skills to your resume and while interviewing as well. And Heather will talk about that in a few minutes. But to finish off this self-assessment piece, let's finish off with that, the support team. So earlier I mentioned that self-assessment is most beneficial when you leverage your support team. Now, it's good to ask for feedback, but who is this support team? So consider your professional resources. Consider them to be maybe a professor, an instructor, a manager, a coworker, and so forth. So you're looking for that constructive feedback. What skills do I have? What am I good at? What can I work on? What gaps might I have? A relative or a parent or a friend or a classmate may not be a good option. So I would consider maybe staying away from that right now. And reason for that is because they may not provide that honest feedback that you're going to need because they might want to spare your feelings. So perhaps look more at a professional level, such as your professor, your manager, or a coworker. So additionally, you can meet with our career services team. So Heather and I are just a couple members of our team, and we can help you brainstorm, and you can receive one-on-one career coaching with the advisors. So just on a side note with that, if you're a Rasmussen student or alumni listening here today, under the student portal, go to the resources tab and select career services. And in that, that's our website, that's the career services website. And I'll show additional contact information at the end of our webinar as well too. But you can go in there, we have a directory, and you can also reach out and touch base with us and schedule an appointment with your career services advisor. So another benefit of a good self-assessment and experience inventory is identifying gaps. So gaps such as training, maybe experience gaps, skills gaps. So how would you do that? How do you identify gaps that truly exist? So one comment that I make to students and grads during our one-on-one meetings is that a well-informed job seeker is more confident in making those next step career choices. So I'm going to say that again. A well-informed job seeker is more confident in making those next step career choices. So meaning research is imperative to the success of a job seeker, and it's an essential element in your job search. So I'm going to move into a few tips here for researching your career and talk just a little bit about this. The first tip is research what people do in your desired role. So if you have your eye on a job title or a position or an industry or a company, what skills do those people need? So how did they get where they are today? You can leverage online resources. There's so much free information available at your fingertips. But don't be afraid to just have a conversation with someone who works in a position that maybe you're hoping to work for. So you may also find, regarding the research and the importance, during an interview, a question might arise. What do you know about our company? Or why did you choose this industry? Are you prepared to answer those questions? Research, research, research. And Heather will talk in more detail about why this is important in her areas. But we're going to move on to tip number 2 in completing an informational interview with a career expert. So you can request a very brief informational interview with a career professional who may be able to provide advice and help answer questions about how to get from here to there regarding the career, that field. The benefit to an informational interview is this could be a very positive networking opportunity. So it can be very informal too. You know, you don't want to take too much of their time, but you can just ask a few questions. Down the road, you could find that this connection could turn out to be a very potential positive reference or a mentor for you down the road. They may also know great ways to gain experience and also additional ways for you to get your foot in the door. So tip number 3, finding parallels. Now, what do I mean by this? So you may not have that exact experience that's on that job description, but you may have other experience that employers are going to find valuable, such as customer service or communication skills, critical thinking, digital fluency, or technology skills as a few examples. Take advantage of those free resources and free information available at your fingertips. I have just a couple of resources, certainly not limited to these here, but a couple of resources. So ONET Online, U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, Career One Stop, and so on. These websites hold a wealth of information to help anyone explore careers, review salaries and wages, skills needed for these occupation. What skills do you have that's also located under some of these websites that could be beneficial to that occupation? So there's just a tremendous amount of information out there. And again, it's free and it's available for us. So let's use it. Let's use it to your ability, leverage that for the success in your job search. So I'm now going to hand it over to Heather to talk in more detail about these resources and how to best apply the information to your resume cover letter and also with interviewing.
Thank you, Stephanie. All right, so let's understand a little bit more about these resources. ONET includes information, as Stephanie mentioned, on skills, also on knowledge, interests, and work activities associated with occupation, and it does include over 900 occupations. ONET was developed by the U.S. Department of Labor. The U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics. This is a federal government agency that measures labor market activity, working conditions, price changes, productivity in the economy. They provide data on employment, wages, inflation, productivity, and a lot more. Career One Stop, this is also supported by the U.S. Department of Labor, and they provide information to support job seekers, students, workers, and employers too in making sound decisions. Each of these sites can provide you with insight in a variety of ways when making decisions about advancing your career or perhaps making a career change, furthering your education, and as Stephanie mentioned just minutes ago, researching your career. Very important. These sites can also support you with ideas and language to support you in writing those job search documents, in addition to helping you prepare for that very important next step, the interview, where you will work to market all of those professional skills and abilities. So your job search documents and the interview sheds light on your ability to communicate professionally, both in writing and speaking. So indirectly showing that particular transferable skill, which is why you need to spend a good amount of time preparing. As Stephanie mentioned, leveraging your support team is going to be important here. Your resume and cover letter represent that very first impression of you as a professional and your ability to write well and professionally get your point across. Your resume is your marketing tool. Think about an ad in a magazine, for example. There is a product being marketed that the seller wants you to buy. This situation is no different. You are the product and the employer is the buyer via your salary, right? So, what are some things that you need to remember? Clean lines and consistency is vital in formatting a resume. Concise information and statements that will be important, and customizing this information based on the job description is going to be key for you. You should have the same you should not have the same resume for every position that you apply to. You want to make sure that you're tailoring it a little bit for that job description. So I want to pause here for just a moment to emphasize something important that Stephanie mentioned a bit earlier. Those two words, experience preferred, that should never be a roadblock for you. Most employers that post job descriptions follow some type of format based on the job search engine that they are using. If you spend any amount of time at all on one job search engine, you're going to start to notice similarities in the formatting of job postings. Employers might ideally want this, such as experience preferred, but they will also consider that, perhaps a new graduate. There is a difference between the word preferred and the word required. Do not let the word experience scare you off. Okay, back to the resume. So the professional summary needs to include a summary of your background. Example, perhaps you have 8 years providing exceptional customer service experience and information that helps you stand out as a candidate. Think about how your background supports your future career. If you're a new healthcare or nursing graduate with no experience in the medical field at all, well, think about how your customer service experience relates to patient care. It's a direct correlation. How about your professional mission statement? How can you include that in your summary? Are you bilingual or maybe multilingual? You should definitely be including that in your statement for sure. Then you put together your skills and your education sections. You can pull skills directly out of your field related courses. There is a reason you're in school. You'll be using that knowledge to establish yourself in your career. So make good use of that information. You can also pull some additional transferable skills into that skills section. If you've completed clinical work, an externship, or an internship, that can either be included within your education section or it can follow your education section. At this point, now you can see that at least visualize that at least the top half of your resume, if not more, is going to show that you're ready to do the job in whatever industry you're applying to. Your cover letter tells more of a summarized story about your professional and educational background and how you can apply all those transferable skills to the position that you're applying for. So transferable skills, communication. I know, Stephanie, you've mentioned a few of these already. critical thinking, leadership, customer service, organizational skills, time management, working with diverse populations, detail oriented. Are you good at analysis? Computer literacy, team management, professionalism, continuous improvement or efficiency processes, and the list can go on and on. So then you want to carry this information with you into the interview. Your job search documents, they serve as a great outline for your interview, but you also have to prepare. Research the position and the organization. You will have done this already, of course, but you need to do it again. Take notes. Bring that pad of paper and pen with you to the interview. You can take notes at an interview. Understand the industry as a whole. Who's the competition? Dress professionally. Now, there's a lot of resources out there with recommendations on how to dress for an interview, but if you have any questions, as Stephanie and I have both mentioned now repeatedly, leverage your support system, your support team, your career services advisor. Be aware of your verbal and your nonverbal communication when you're in an interview. Are you sitting up and forward in your chair? Do you look excited to be there? Are you smiling? Are you making eye contact with the person or the people you are interviewing with? Whether engaging through a computer or in person at an interview, you have to connect with a certain level of excitement with the people you're speaking to. Are you articulating responses well? Are you using the professional language within the industry? All these things you have to work on, and you have to prepare for these things. Practice, practice, practice responding to those interview questions, and remember that those transferable skills are your friend. Know what you include on your resume and in your cover letter, and use this information when you're responding to those interview questions. Employers want to know that you understand how to use your skills in the field that you're going into. Again, leverage your support team. Get some coaching from your career advisor if you're just not sure how to answer certain questions. Now, let's take a moment to just jump back over to the resume piece one more time before I introduce our guests. I didn't forget about the experience section of the resume, but for many that have little to no experience in the field, this is where people get stuck. I've heard from many students, well, I don't have anything to put in this section because I have no field related experience. Stephanie, you mentioned that earlier. As we have alluded to previously, that's okay. Experience is experience. Stephanie mentioned it, and I'm going to mention it again, paid or unpaid. It needs to be showcased in your experience section. If you have paid experience, then you might title this section something like work history or professional experience. If you don't, then you may just simply title this section experience, and volunteer experience counts too. Now, to continue this conversation, I'd like to introduce our panel of industry experts who are going to provide some insight and coaching. We were recently informed that Rafaela could not be with us today due to unforeseen circumstances, but nevertheless, we are joined by two fabulous women who are here to support our conversation today. Antonia Moore is Manager of Talent and Development at Midtronics. Antonia has over 20 years of various human resources experience, including career development, corporate recruiting, and HR management. She is a member of SHRM and supports various local chapters. She also serves on various workforce development and community-based committees. Thank you for being here today, Antonia.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Kimberly Skesha, right? Did I say that right? All right. Kimberly Skesha has been in healthcare since 2000. She has experience in consulting, serving in interim leadership and IT roles, as well as experience in healthcare industry, having worked at Halifax Health in Daytona Beach, Florida, Adventist Health System in Orange City, Florida, and now as the Vice President of Revenue Cycle at Mercy Health Systems in Northern Illinois and Southern Wisconsin. She's overseeing over 500 employees spanning everything from pre-service, scheduling and authorization obtainment to clinical documentation improvement, coding, revenue integrity, managed care, customer service, and more. Kimberly has ushered her team through the great reshuffle and has been focused on training her leaders to interview for the right fit and to look beyond the resume. Welcome, Kimberly.
Thank you.
All right, our first scenario, we're going to break things down in a scenario format. And I'm hoping that many of you are able to relate to some of this. Our first scenario is the stay-at-home parent or caregiver. I have worked with many students, and I know Stephanie has as well, who have stepped out of their career or just never started their career to raise a family, or have served as the primary caregiver for elderly grandparents or ill parents. Kimberly, what advice do you have for individuals who face this type of situation?
Well, the number one most important thing that I would want any stay-at-home parent or caregiver to make sure that they keep in the back of their mind is don't run out and accept any job, right? Kind of like what you were talking about earlier with asking yourself about what skills can you bring, but also really asking yourself what role fits best in your life, right? What things do you have going on in your life that you need to make sure that fit within your own personal situation, right? Caregivers and stay-at-home parents, they really have a lot of commitments, and it takes a lot of hard work to do either one of those roles. So in today's environment, making sure that you find the right job for you is also as critically important. The other thing is I loved where you all were talking this morning about really doing that self-assessment and how does that transition. I want to give you a great example. I had an employee of mine who she interviewed for a leadership position, and she hadn't had any prior supervisory experience. And I asked her, I said, well, how would you empower others? Because that's what I'm really looking for in leaders is, you know, being able to grow others and empower them. And she gave me, hands down, the best interview answer I've ever had. And she said, you know, I have a new home, and the ceilings are very, very high in my home, and there's no light switches because it's an older home. And she said what she did was she actually went out and bought the longer cords for all of the ceiling fans and the lights and bought a stool for her young daughter. And she talked about how that empowered her daughter to be able to turn on and off the fixtures. And I was like, wow, what a great way to be able to transition the skills you have at home into what you can do in leadership. And of course, like, don't you know, I quoted her, like, that was the best interview answer I ever got, you know? And I don't think that people that are caregivers in any sense of the form really give themselves enough credit because, you know, I think about coordinating doctor visits or children's sporting events and your home life and your groceries and your spouse and then also how do you coordinate your balance. And if you can learn how to articulate those things in an interview, I think it's going to go a very, very long way. You know, having said all of that, one of the things that you do need to really be thinking about, especially if you've been in a caregiver position for a while, and you guys touched on this a little bit, is making sure you have a question, right? If you're going into a new role and potentially a whole new employer, make sure you have a question prepared. You know, there's nothing worse than when I conduct an interview and I say to somebody, because I say this all the time, I'm like, look, I am very aware, especially nowadays, that you are interviewing me just as much as I'm interviewing you. What questions do you have for me? Worst absolute thing you could do is say, nothing, I have no questions.
Yeah.
So it's critically important to do the research and give yourself some credit. This is your time to shine, right? Like, think about all those crazy things that, you know, you have to deal with. I'm sure you probably heard my loud puppy in the background barking, and, you know, unfortunately I've got a new roof being put on today and I'm coordinating the pups, but I'm still making time to coordinate other things that are going on in my business career. And, give yourself some credit. So, Antonia, do you have things that you think about too when it comes to this?
Absolutely. And you guys had some great tips earlier. The first thing I would say is researching companies or jobs that you may be interested in and really looking at those descriptions, finding out what the day to day would be and whether or not you see yourself in that role, full time or part time or whatever. And then thinking about some of the experiences that you have either at home or as a caregiver that are relatable. You mentioned like coordinating various schedules, so time management skills, efficiencies, collaboration. If you're managing different schools or different teachers or different, extracurricular activities, all of those are transferable skills. And think about how that can relate to the position that you're looking into, whether it's in leadership or entry level or just a new career field altogether. And then the other tip that I would have is find a way to put that on your resume. Sometimes I will see this huge gap, and you have to be able to talk to the recruiter or the interviewer to be able to explain that. And that's one way to overcome that is put down something on your resume that speaks to what you have learned in these roles, because let's face it, they're still roles, right? You're still doing some sort of work, you're still gaining some sort of skills and knowledge, and you can use that to your advantage. So don't be afraid to be creative and put that on your resume. When I see be creative, I don't mean that you have to come up with this strange title that I see. You can say at home caregiver or self-employed or something like that, or even just add that to your skills section so that the recruiter knows to ask you a little bit more about that. But be prepared to speak to it. You don't have to go into detail about, children or anything that you feel uncomfortable talking about personally, but you can definitely talk about those skill sets that you're learning in these positions that you're doing for yourself. So be creative. Don't be afraid to speak to it, and don't leave it off of your resume altogether, because I think that's the biggest mistake that people make, especially when we talk about having those gaps. The main reason is that because we don't speak to what we're doing within those gaps. So
Yes.
make sure you include that.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I'm so happy you brought that up. Not too long ago, I had a medical assistant student come to me and say, I'm not even sure what to do with my resume. I have been the caregiver for 3 members of my family for the last 11 years. What am I supposed to do with that? Well, we found a way to create an experience section that showcased the fact that she was a caregiver. And interestingly enough, not surprising, but interestingly enough to her, all of a sudden we discovered all of these skills and all of this information she could include that's directly related to medical assisting. So thank you so much for mentioning the resume piece, Antonia. I think that's so important. All right, our second group of people who tend to struggle understanding what they have to offer an employer are those who might be considered entry level and military personnel or veterans. Entry level are those who may have had a job or two or have served in the military and are now wanting to step into their career. For example, many of our military students don't see their time in the military as experience, rather a part of the service to our country, which absolutely it is. And if we have anyone on this presentation today that was is served in our military, thank you for your service. But many times I have lengthy conversations with these individuals to really help them discover the value skill sets that they have acquired in these type of positions. And even those who are entry level and have had maybe just 1 or 2 jobs, what did they do in those 1 or 2 jobs that's pertinent to the position that they're applying to? Antonia, what insights can you provide to these individuals?
Sure. So, speaking first about entry level, even if you haven't had any work experience, if you went straight to school, out of high school or out of college, utilize what you've learned in school. It may not even be an internship. Maybe it's a group project that you worked on. Talk about that group project in your role. Did you coordinate the team? Did you schedule meetings so that you can talk about the project? Were you the one to present it and make sure the assignment was submitted on time? Those are all great qualities that employers look for in entry level candidates. Military service is great. I love recruiting military professionals. One, because they have an awesome amount of discipline. Usually they come with some sort of leadership experience. They come with so many different technical skills and the ability to adapt and learn quickly. So all of those things are transferable to absolutely any industry that they want to go into. So leverage that to your advantage.
Yeah, I would, excuse me, I would agree completely, Antonia. And I would even go one step further, like on the entry level, especially if you're coming right out of college, making sure that that translates on your resume. Don't be afraid to put all the community events that you did and all the, group projects and what your role was. Don't be afraid to do that because that's what we're looking for. Now, from a true entry level perspective, if you've only had one or two jobs, or you've been in, the industry where you've done maybe customer service, or you've done only jobs that have like working in restaurants and whatnot, use that to your advantage. It's really funny. My nephew is in his early 20s. He's a new graduate out of college, and he's really struggling with how to translate what he's done to his resume. And we've talked a lot about the skills, right? And so he's worked at Jimmy John's forever, right? And he's like, I want to start my career. And I'm like, well, talk to me about what you did at Jimmy John's. And to your point earlier about that self-assessment, that is a tremendous amount of customer service skill set, right? You got to deal with people who might be grouchy, especially if their delivery didn't get there on time or their order got messed up. And so we talked about how to translate that on paper, right? Because in today's day and age, as you mentioned earlier, we talk a lot about, I want to interview for this skill set. Normally, I can teach you a job. I can teach you how to bill and how to collect and, how to do those things that the government and healthcare says you have to do X, Y, and Z. What I can't teach people is that customer service mentality, right? And even when I think about military employees, right? Yes, super disciplined, usually have good leadership, but moreover, they have a heart for service. Anyone that goes into the military, they do that because they want to serve. And again, in most major companies, what are we all about? Community service, giving back, making sure that we're doing the right things by our customers, especially in healthcare. And so that military transition, right, talk about your desire and your passion to serve, because that's what translates into what businesses are looking for at this point, because not only are we serving our customers, but we want to serve each other, right? We want to be good to each other. And those are the kind of employees that we are really looking for.
Thank you, Kimberly. When you mentioned Jimmy John's, I have many students who have those roles. They worked at McDonald's, Jimmy John's. They maybe were a waitress at Applebee's or Red Robin. They don't see that as valuable, or some don't see it as a career, and so they don't feel that that experience even matters. And so I know, at Jimmy John's, I love Jimmy John's, and I go there, and sometimes it is so busy, and there's a whole line of
Yeah.
people. So on your resume, how many people do you serve an hour? 20 to 30 people, and I can work well under pressure, and that can be applied to a role at McDonald's, and finding a way to
Right.
tie in your skills to the success of the business and how you drive that profit and how you help those customers retain and come back for a positive experience. So yeah, absolutely. All of that counts. All of it matters. And I hope, by now, with our listeners here today and our attendees, that you've maybe found that you've related to some of these areas or instances. We do have one more that we would like to talk about, and many attendees may be able to relate to this scenario of our career changers. So career changers have been working in a specific industry or a career for several years. So they may be professionally established and developed in that career area. So now they're maybe looking for a change or perhaps pursuing a passion that they've always wanted to pursue, but maybe have never had the chance to obtain a degree until now. So as a career changer looks into their new industry, they may not clearly understand how to promote these established skills and strengths from their previous experience into the new field. And I'll just provide one example here because this was just this month. I talked to a student who had been working in the legal industry for 15 years, and he was now ready to make a change, and he went back to school for nursing. And so we were talking about how he can apply his skills in the legal industry into nursing because he did not see it as relevant. It was just a tiny little section way down at the bottom of the resume. And I thought, no, let's redo this. So maybe Kimberly, we start with you. If I could hand it over to you, if you can provide your expertise for our career changers.
Absolutely. Too funny. Story for another day, but I started my career in legal and ended up in healthcare, so I can totally relate to that. But your career changers, and really almost everyone that we've talked about, you are in the most unique position that I've ever seen over the last 20 years. You know, you talked a little bit about gaps on your resume and whatnot, and right now, that's normal, right? COVID and the pandemic, it sort of created major gaps in schedules, and so we don't really live in a world anymore where people see a 6-month or a 2-year gap in your employment history and go, ugh, you know, what's that red flag? And we are seeing now more than ever in our country, people changing careers. And so I guess for me, it's more about everything we've talked about, using whatever it is that you're looking at. So let's take the example you provided, right? You have someone who's in legal that wants to go into nursing, doing that skills assessment, figuring out how you can transition some of what you already know or what you're already doing, maybe in school or in your community, into the skills that apply to that role. Doing your research, making sure that you truly understand. You know, the other interesting thing that's happened, and I know this just because we've done a lot of job description redesigns. You talked a little bit about the difference between preferred and required. We've changed a lot of that in our job descriptions, right? And really, as I think about it, doing your research on that role, because lots of organizations have also changed the name, for lack of a better word, of a role. Used to be everything before was like we called them a specialist, and now we're moving into the world of an analyst, you know, and we don't call them representative anymore. And so there's just a lot of different things out there. Go out to Indeed, do major searches for key terms, look at what, you know, the job roles are asking for, and think about, okay, well, they're asking for these 5 functions in this role. How can I relate to that? Do I know what they're looking for? Do I have any experience anywhere in my home life, my professional life? You know, and I loved what you said earlier too about using your support system. Again, I've personal experience with this. My brother-in-law is a lifelong teacher. He has been a high school music teacher for over 25 years, and he is looking to change careers. And he and I have done a lot of role playing for, you know, interviews. I've helped him with his resume and just really trying to help people see beyond, I've done this for my entire life, and how do I transition it? Use all those tools that you have at your disposal, because you will be amazed at how employers and HR personnel have shifted to hire for your attitude and for skills rather than major experience, in my opinion.
I would also add to that, be open as a career changer. So I worked in the manufacturing industry, and we were doing interviews, and we specifically targeted fast food workers for their ability to work in fast-paced, highly chaotic environments, for lack of a better word, because they just handled those scenarios so well. And so I was interviewing a young man who had just finished his associate's degree, and he was changing career fields. And we talked with him about an entry level position because he did not have the leadership experience that we were looking for, but he showed some great promise. We talked to him about the entry level role, but let him know that, like, hey, if you stick with us, we see great potential in you. And I can tell you within a specific timeline where your career track could go, you know, if you continue along with this development. Um, he wasn't really interested at first, but took a chance on us. And I will tell you, within 3 months, he was a trainer within the company. Within 6 months, he was in team lead. And with a year and a half, he was a shift supervisor. So sometimes you have to be open to maybe taking a step back, or even open to taking a step forward, because opposite end, we were interviewing a young woman who was a shift manager at McDonald's, and we brought her in immediately as a team lead to help us with some training. And she is still with the company and doing well. So sometimes when we look at changing careers, we have this vision of where we see ourselves, and that may not be in alignment with the company, but explore options, explore different opportunities. You mentioned doing a brief introductory call. I do those in my current role all the time. Even though I'm recruiting for the company as well, I will take 15 or 20 minutes to talk to candidates about a day in the life of the position. What are some of the skills we're looking for? You know, what are some characteristics that do well? Even with just the industry, marketing or manufacturing, and just giving them as much information as I can. And there are also a lot of other recruiters who will do the same thing. So exploratory conversations. You mentioned having a mentor in a specific field. They can give you insight as to what you would be doing on a day-to-day basis, or what some of the skills employers would be looking for. So I would just say be very open to different career opportunities, and don't be afraid to ask questions and explore to make sure that you find the right fit for yourself.
Oh, Antonia, I'm very glad you mentioned that be open comment. You know, a lot of times when we're pursuing specific degrees or areas of study, and there's maybe that one job title in your mind. So maybe it's business analyst, and you think I can only apply to these roles with this title. And so then you'll go to the search engines and type in just those two words. And we can't limit ourselves to that. We have to be open. And as Kimberly mentioned, job titles and job descriptions are changing, and they're ever evolving with the current trends that we're experiencing. So it is so crucial that you do your research and you're open to many possibilities. And, you know, having a conversation with Antonia, and maybe she can help provide a direction on a better job or a position that could work with your skills and your background. So really great information. I so greatly appreciate your professional insights today, and helping us work through some of these scenarios. We're going to start work towards creating our action plan here, and then we're going to approach a couple of our questions that have been coming in. So with this fantastic information and feedback, I'm hoping that our attendees are taking notes. This will be recorded, so you're welcome to watch this back again. And just if you want to catch a couple more of those tips or guidance or advice, you're welcome to listen to the webinar a second time. So I've heard things. I wrote a couple of notes down myself on on my paper here. So shifting the employment trends, shifting to hire for personalities and skill sets, reviewing those job descriptions. How do you fit in those roles? Now, certainly having there's a job or a description that attracts you. There's a reason that it attracts you. You must have a passion or a talent for that. So really great information. So I want you to incorporate this feedback today. I want you to hopefully, I hope you gain some more confidence, and that you're thinking about some ideas right now. Maybe you have some action plans ready to go, and you're typing furiously on the other side of the computer screen. But be able to use that confidence and be confident about the experience that you do have, because you do have experience.
Yes, absolutely you do. And you should seek ways to gain additional experience if you need to as well. We talked about volunteering. I know that the landscape has changed a little bit and there's some new protocols in place, but there's still plenty of volunteering opportunities out there. And really hone in on what your professional mission statement is. Hone in on what the organization's professional mission and vision statements are. An employer doesn't necessarily need to hear you repeat what their mission and vision statement is, but understand how your professional mission statement as a nurse, as someone in IT, as an accountant, whatever career field you're in school for, or you're currently in, understand how that aligns with the organization that you're applying to. It's going to be really important. So now it's time to jump into some of those questions. We received so many great questions from our registrants when they initially registered, and it looks like we have some additional fantastic questions that have come in as well. So we've had a few about resumes. And what information, I guess I would ask Antonia and Kimberly, what information stands out to you the most on a resume, considering, of course, the topic that we're discussing today, no experience, no problem? How would you best advise our listeners regarding the content? I know you've given some advice on that already, but what stands out to you?
I can go first if you don't mind, Kimberly. The
Mhm.
first thing that I would say, there is no one size fits all resume. So please adjust and customize your resume for every position that you're applying to. You're going to use not only keywords, but talk about specific experience, skill sets, technology that are related to the job, and that we can pick up on that very quickly if someone has done that. I can envision this person doing certain things in the role while looking through their resume. Even if when you think about the order of your resume, we talked about experience or even internships. You can use internships first, or class projects first, or relevant experience versus other experience. So thinking about ways to highlight job specific information is going to be really important. So please, please, please customize your resumes. If you don't take anything else away, do not submit a resume with a statement talking about a customer service position when you're applying for a medical assistant role or something like that. So tailor those summary statements, tailor those skill sets to the position that you're applying to.
I couldn't agree more. I won't even, return a contact if someone hasn't customized. I've gotten a few where, even they'll put a cover letter and it'll say, "Dear George." And I'm like, okay, well, you didn't bother to, even
Yeah.
customize this. So definitely customizing it. And you're right, there is no one size fits all. Again, taking my nephew as an example, he told me yesterday when we were looking at his resume, he was like, "Oh, but my friend said it has to be one page." I'm like, "No, it doesn't." I said, "No, it doesn't, because it has to be customized to you." The other thing I will say, just from a sheer documentation perspective, don't get into all kinds of crazy fonts. And, I've seen some resumes where we've got like 10 different fonts, and it's,
Mhm.
a Sanskrit up here and a Calibri here and an Arial there. And it's very detracting, right? So you want it to be very clear, and font sizes, and that makes it a difference. You don't need fancy colors and all that other stuff. Like, you need to be concise and clear on your resume. I think that's a big thing.
Thank you for mentioning that. I know we mentioned consistency earlier, and without getting into like the deep dive of a resume, that's important information to know. Thank you.
And before we move on, I was add one more thing. In the first slide, you mentioned accomplishments. That is going to be much more important than day-to-day tasks. I see a lot of people copy and pasting the descriptions or the bullets from the job description
Yes.
or from something online. I don't want to know that you know restocked 1,000 straws. But if you were able to streamline a process or make it more efficient, or if you trained 3 other people on how to restock straws, that's an accomplishment. So focus on those things versus tasks that are maybe listed somewhere else. Don't copy and paste.
Good advice. And yes, definitely want to streamline the straw process, but that an awesome recommendation. We see the same thing, and it's hard to put those actionable items, turn them into strengths. But again, talk with somebody about it. Talk with your career advisor, and we're happy to help you make those adjustments. So we've had quite a few questions come in, and this one is kind of unique to current trends and the pandemic and the last 2 years in particular. But questions have come in regarding remote work or working from home positions at an entry level. So we want to talk to you about this and about your organizations and hiring remote employees at an entry level, again, considering our topic regarding little to no experience.
From my perspective, yes, we are doing that. It's been a challenge, I'll be 100% honest, not because of the employees, but the technology that you need and the training that's required. So not every position across my part of Mercy Health can be done remotely, but yes, we do. I have employees in Hawaii. I have employees in Florida, Alabama, North Carolina, Arizona. And yes, we do hire entry-level positions as remote employees with the understanding that there are metrics you have to hit. And if you don't hit those metrics, you will go through the process of verbal, written, and you will be dismissed if you cannot hit the metrics. So, but we do that now. It's taken us a little bit longer than I would have liked to get there, but we do offer it.
We offer remote as well for entry-level positions as well as hybrid. So the one thing that I would say is to be honest on your application. If you're looking for a remote, that's usually not something that can be negotiated during the offer process. So let the employers know up front whether or not you're looking for remote or if you're open to hybrid. And also in the interview process, they will ask you questions, as we mentioned. That can be one of your questions. What does the work environment look like? Is it remote? Is it hybrid? Is it in person? And they can explain to you their process. So we do offer remote, but the first 4 to 6 weeks, you have to be in person for that training and onboarding. And then after that, it can be fully remote. So you should be aware of that up front and know if that's something that you can accommodate.
Good. And if I could just add on one more part to this question, some of the students and graduates might ask me, well, I don't see that this role is remote in the job description. Is that something that you would encourage individuals to apply to the position? Is that something that's in the job descriptions or just on a case-by-case basis?
Well, and I know for me, like I said, we've been going through the very long, arduous process of going through and redoing our job descriptions. And, it's one of those things that's a process, and it takes a long time, especially when you have multiple different roles and responsibilities. So I would tell folks that first, before you apply for a remote or hybrid job, if you've never had one, be honest with yourself. Because I can tell you that I've had a lot of people that have gone to the hybrid environment from being a full-on remote or full-on site partner after the pandemic and said, please don't ever send me home again. I can't do it. It's very, very hard to work from home. I'm here to tell you, it is a hard thing to do. But if you really are interested in a job and it doesn't specifically say remote options available, go ahead and apply. What's the worst thing that happened? You can have an interview with someone, get some practice and ask the question, especially if you're in one of these scenarios coming, coming right out of college or career change or whatnot. It's important to get that practice. So what's the worst that can happen? You can find out that it's not available and get a chance to practice.
I agree. It may not always be listed in the description. Sometimes the application, we will allow you to list your preference. I would say apply in that first contact with whether it's a recruiter or a manager or whoever. You can always ask if that's an option. And the reason that it's not always listed, for me, it depends on how I am marketing the position and what platforms it's going on. So for my company, I post a lot of positions on LinkedIn, and if you list remote, it allows everyone in the world, not just the U.S., to apply. And so we do require our employees to be U.S. citizens. So I will specifically put a work location, one, so you know where our company is headquartered, but two, to try and limit the international applications. I may list something that says, ask me about our remote or hybrid opportunities. But even if you do not see that, it could just be because of how it has to be posted or how it has to be marketed. So I would say that if you're interested in the role, if there's something that you like about the position, you should always apply to learn more, because you may be able to find other similar roles, even if that's not remote, that may be interested in down the line.
Great, thank you. I appreciate you answering that question. It has been kind of a hot topic, and a lot of students have had discussions and asked questions about that. So wonderful. Well, we are at 1 o'clock, so we've spent a lovely hour here with some wonderful professionals. Thank you for joining us, Kimberly. Thank you for joining us, Antonia. Appreciate you having joining Heather and I today. For all of those attendees currently listening, we had so many great questions. This really drove a lot of discussion in the Q&A, and I greatly appreciate you being here. If you would like to connect with your career services advisor and talk in more detail, so if we did not answer your question, please reach out to career services. So if you go into the student portal, if you're a student or a graduate, Student Portal, Resources tab, and Career Services. Or you're welcome to use the general email address of Career Services Online at rasmussen.edu, and we will connect you with your career services advisor for some one-on-one career counseling and a discussion to answer your questions. So I appreciate everyone being here. Take care and have a great rest of your Wednesday.
Thank you.